Welcome back, everybody, to ND and Free, the podcast, a podcast and media platform that explores how NDers can live their truth and feel free in their lives. We hear from inspiring coaches, therapists, experts, and fellow NDers from all over the world. My name's Owen Morgan. I'm a wellbeing coach and ADHD coach, soon to launch my coaching business. I have over 10 years experience in the wellbeing sector, and I've interviewed over 500 people across 4 podcasts. I received my ADHD diagnosis at 41, and it changed my life. My mission is to explore how the human spirit and understand our whole self can bring us a life full of possibilities. Okay, guys, I had a couple weeks off, so I'm really excited to get back into this today. And it's good to launch back with a me, myself, and ND episode. So this is where we hear people's stories who also have loads of wisdom to share, rather than our Thrive Guide show, which is with our coaches. Today, we are sat down with Scott Frampton of Sober Compass on Instagram. Scott shares his experiences of recovery, healing, and the power of breath work. Welcome to the show, Scott. I'm really excited to talk to you. We haven't had many men in the last 6 or 7 months of this show existing. So thank you for being in this space with me for 2 men to talk about something important.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Very happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you, mate. Thank you very much. Looking forward to this. So we're going to cover everything from what it is to go on the sober journey, how ADHD plays into addiction. It's very, very, this is going to be very, very interesting as we unpack that. So lots to share here for everybody to learn from. There's probably things to relate to as well. But before we do that, I know I've done an intro for you, but just give us a sense of what you're doing out there online to raise awareness of addiction, but also how that ties into neurodivergence as well.
Yeah, okay. So I've been sober now since October 4th, 2021. With a small brief relapse in November last year. And the reason I kind of joined Instagram and started talking about the experience is because things like addiction, alcoholism, and mental health challenges for men of my background are not often talked about, or they're not. It's hard to get people to open up, and I figured if I can create a platform where I just talk honestly and earnestly about the experience, about struggle, about overcoming challenges, overcoming our own minds, and the kind of the in some ways brutal dialogue that our minds throw at us. I thought that could be inspiring and relatable to people, and sort of if I help one person, that's good for me. So that's why I started Sober Compass, and it's kind of branched out. It was initially just about sobriety, but sobriety is kind of it encapsulates everything: your mindset, your health, your place in the world, your background. Everything kind of contributes to, or can undermine your sobriety. And a big turning point earlier this year was being diagnosed with ADHD. It answered a lot of questions, and I'm sure we'll get into that. But so that's kind of come into the fray as well. But it's there really to kind of be a bit of a relatable story about addiction, about alcoholism, about just trying to exist in the world.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I was going through your page before I came on the show today. And what I really like about what you're doing is that you're bridging that gap between just the guy on the street just doing what he thinks he should be doing and behaving the way that he's been told to behave. But what's really good is because you're talking about personal growth and healing, recovery, things like that. Those words could be quite triggering for people who know nothing about it. They're like, oh God, shut up. What are you on about? Just get on with it. And what you're doing is very subtle. The way you use your quotes on your posters, it's getting people just across a little bit to at least dip their toes in. So I just wanted to give you some respect for that, because it's easy for me to jump on after all these years of doing this and using all these fancy words about the nervous system and all this. And people, they're not going to listen to me in the same way they'll listen to you, which is trying to get them across the line. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. It's kind of like the thing I always keep in mind is I don't want to drag people by the neck. I want to just gently nudge them in the back, So that's kind of what I try and do.
Yeah.
Keep it honest, keep it simple, keep it real, keep it, from the heart, from the gut, and authentic as possible.
Yeah, I love that. I encourage people to go and check out your page. There's a really interesting video. Go and check it out, guys. I think it's the first one I saw on the feed where you're sat in the car and you're talking about walking to the shop. and walking past the pub. That was really relatable. And it's all well and good stopping doing something, but put yourself in that environment again. I mean, just a normal mind and nervous system struggle, let alone a neurodivergent one that's really going to want to go for that dopamine. So, yeah, go check that video out, guys. It's great. All right, let's jump in then a little bit more. So, we are going to talk about addiction a lot, obviously, but let's just hit home with the neurodivergent piece because that's what the show's about. So yeah, I got diagnosed at 41. You're saying 48, which wow, at 48 was wow, your life could shift in any moment now from this. Did you have any suspicion about this beforehand? What even led you to think, oh, I'll better go for assessment? I'm intrigued by that.
Yeah, so I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, an ex-partner, after we'd split up, was pursuing an ADHD diagnosis, and when filling out the form, could think of 10 or 15 examples for me and not for themselves. And they kind of said, you know, you need to pursue this, you need to look at it. And I always had a little bit of a suspicion. I always knew that I was different. I was a little bit, I don't know, I wasn't the what's the term? I wasn't the conventional ADHD. I wasn't hyperactive. I wasn't, you know, loud or extroverted. I was very quiet and insular and almost I strive to be the invisible person in the room. So that in my mind kind of like kept me away from pursuing it because I was thinking, well, I'm not what I thought ADHD was. But when she told me that, I started looking at it a little bit. But I was kind of coming to the end of my drinking. So I wasn't really in a place to explore something like that. And then when I entered recovery and did the 12 steps and a lot more kind of awareness of myself, it came up again. And people would just mention, Scott, have you got ADHD? And I again, I'd go back to, well, no, because I'm not hyperactive. You know, I had such a different view of what ADHD actually is than what it is. And so the thoughts were there, the suspicions were there. It is in our family quite a lot. ADHD and autism is in my family. And I guess as time went on, probably over the last year or so, year and a bit, I was starting to really struggle. I was really starting to struggle just with everyday life. I felt, you know, I was so sensitive to rejection. I was so hypercritical of myself. I was, you know, I'd given up alcohol. I'd been really healthy and all of these kind of things, but I would always focus on the one thing I wasn't doing right. And that would become their weapon to beat me with. And I started thinking, you know, there must be something going on here because I've done so much therapy. I've done so much breath work, meditation. I felt like I was doing everything right, but I still had these feelings of I'm different. I'm not part of. And so I started looking at it, and the more I read, I realized that, you know, the list of traits was basically describing me. It was like, oh, I didn't know that was what ADHD is. And I think that's the thing where people have this idea of ADHD as a specific thing. And I had that as well. It was only when I started reading the material, I was pretty convinced that, yeah, I had this. But the challenge was, having been through alcoholism, I didn't want another label. I didn't want to be, you know, alcoholic. I was highly sensitive, shy. I didn't want neurodivergent as well. For whatever reason, I didn't want to be defined by it. But it got to the point where I think the saying is when the pain of change, when the pain of staying the same is harder than change, you look to change. And last year was just very, very difficult. All of the masking techniques, all of the coping strategies, they weren't working anymore. And I was kind of running empty a lot of the time. And that's what kind of prompted me to speak to the NHS and say, I want to diagnose, I want to pursue whether I've got ADHD. And I thought they would just say, "I'll up your antidepressants and come back 6 months time, see how you are." But he kind of looked at my case history, and we did the kind of referral, clinical referral they did. And after it, he said, "We need to get you referred ASAP." I was like, okay. So then I did the NHS right to choose and got diagnosed in February. And it answered an awful lot. It also opened up a lot of pain, grieving. I guess we'll get into that, but yeah, I always, in later years, knew there was something, but I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, there's two things that came up for me there. About 20 episodes ago, we talked about this. And I don't know if this is the right words for you, but when I talk about ADHD, there's the inattentive as well. So there's that, the ADHD, which is inside of ourselves. Quite often this happens with women. So it's all in your head, it's all inside of you, it's your emotions, and no one sees it. It's like not there. No one, it's blind to anybody else. And they're the people that neurotypicals will say, oh, you seem fine. I can't see anything. You're not jumping on the table and whatever. And I think there's a misconception that men wouldn't have inattentive. That's not something they would have, which is absolute rubbish. So does that ring true to you, this sort of internalized version of ADHD?
Absolutely. And one of the biggest realizations was, I mentioned earlier, I wasn't hyperactive. Well, outwardly I wasn't hyperactive, but inwardly there was never a moment's peace. My brain was going like a machine gun, just scattergun on various different things and thoughts and theories, and it was all internal. And I actually got diagnosed with the inattentive subtype of ADHD. And they said as well that the hyperactivity was my lowest area of, I guess, impact, but that really rings true. Everything for me was inside because I would hide, and I had learned very well how to keep it inside and present a facade of confidence and balance. Whereas inside, it's like the swan going across the water, right? It looks lovely on the surface, but underneath it's paddling for dear life, and you can only keep that up for so long.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's why, I don't know, I'd like to see the statistics when it comes to chronic burnout and things, attentive to hyperactive to non-attentive, to see if there's a clear percentage difference. Really fascinating research to see. But there's something else you mentioned, which was really interesting, which is not wanting yet another label to stick on top of you. I am Scott. I am all of these things. It's kind of like you're turning up with a little ingredients list for who you are, and everyone needs to know your ingredients. So this is a really tricky situation. But as you're going for assessment, this is a really interesting question. Did you want to have it? Were you like, if I don't get it, what the hell is wrong with me? These are all words that I'm using for me. How was that? And you ran into it? Were you like, please give this to me? Or
I absolutely wanted it. I wanted to have it because I felt that all the reading I'd done, all the kind of self-inquiry I'd done, I was feeling like this is possibly last chance saloon, because I was doing everything I could, 12-step recovery, meditation, breath work, all of these things, eating well, and I still had this kind of sense of I'm not enough. I'm the odd one out. I'm never happy, and I'm always alone in a crowded room. All these things, right? And like things like forgetting things, dropping things, just being really brutal to myself. I thought this has got to be the answer. So in the lead up to it, I was very nervous, and I will say I was. Please let me have this, right? So it's a bit ironic in that at one point I was like, I don't want another label, but when it came down to it, and I'd gone through the assessments, gone through the process, I was like, it must be this, because it would explain so much. It would just explain so much as to why I drank so much. I was trying to regulate myself. I was trying to just survive. Towards the last 4 or 5 years, I wasn't drinking for fun. It was just to survive, just to quiet my head down. So yeah, I did want it. I really wanted it, because I felt like it would validate my struggle in a way. That makes it sound weird, but yeah, I felt like it would validate my struggle. It would give me something I could understand and be like, okay, I understand why I do these things. I'm not just a failure. I'm not just an idiot. I'm not just all those insert horrible self-defeating term. I've got a condition that means I'm not wired for the structure of society that we currently have. And I've spent years and years trying to mold myself to it, bending myself into hideous shapes. And yes, I wanted it.
Yeah, thank you so much. So many little nuggets of wisdom in there. And it's true. It's kind of, it gives us the answers, but it doesn't define who we are. So whether you want to tell the world or not, you don't have to do that either. It's for you. It's not meant to be for, I mean, you can use it obviously for access to work, and obviously you can use it to help you get what you need, which is really cool. But I think we define ourselves by any characteristic that's underpinned by label, then, it's not. Owen isn't I'm not Owen. I'm ADHD and that's all I am. I'm so much more than that. God damn, does it give you some answers, which is incredible.
Okay. Absolutely.
So before we move on to more around the addiction side of things, you get this. I'm fascinated by this because mine was very specific. You get email, phone call in the moment, whenever it was, when they said, Scott, you're inattentive ADHD. Tell me the emotion. Tell me what happened. I need to know.
So I did I went through the NHS and their right to choose process. And when I had the 2.5 hour assessment, it was quite full on, as you know, you're aware. And just at the end of the session, she very nonchalantly, very casually just said, "You are now diagnosed with inattentive ADHD." And it almost was so simply stated, and so it almost felt like she was saying, I don't know, it was just so understated. It took me a few seconds to sort of hang on. And I said, "Sorry, can you repeat that?" She said, "We've diagnosed you. You've met all of the criteria for ADHD with the inattentive subtype." And I was just dumbfounded. I was like, initially, I thank God, but at the same time, it was a really strange, bittersweet moment. But I've got answers. I now understand why I am the way I am. And it was so freeing and liberating. But then it was a case of, but what if I'd done this 20 years ago? Would I be an alcoholic? Would I have gone through all of that pain? Would I have pushed these people away? And it came just like that. But the overarching emotion was, in those first couple of days, just relief, just absolute relief. Because I knew that it wasn't me fundamentally flawed as a human being. It was me trying to survive with a mind, like they're saying, your mind could be a terrible terrible master, but a wonderful servant. My mind was the master and I was the cowering servant. And just to understand that, and the fact that I had done pretty well considering I had undiagnosed ADHD for so many years, it was just really validating, a relief, and it changed my life. It did change my life, markedly so. But there was a period of grieving, there was a period of what ifs and this and that. But I realised I could spend a lot of time down that rabbit hole, or I can just accept it as it is and shift my life around to make the most of it. Or, you know, I felt more impetus to actually explore and really educate myself, because I'd been told I have ADHD. It wasn't suspected ADHD. It was, you do have this. And that really kind of galvanized my, I guess, interest and ability to consume information on it. Because as we know, consuming information can be a challenge, especially if it's not kind of purposeful or meaningful. And for me, I learned about ADHD, but I didn't have it as far as I knew. So it was kind of like more, I don't know, you know what I mean? But no, it was a life-changing moment, but it was very bittersweet.
Sounds like she has obviously done it a lot, and in her brain, it's like, oh, people just want to know, so off you go then. But I just had an email, so I didn't even have any, actual thing. So, but then they give you a big print out, and you read through it. Oh, this is so cool, and you get to like all the things that they talk about. But it's interesting, isn't it? Because people don't realize in that moment, there's the life you had and who you think you were before it, and then, all right, so now I've got to re-identify, I suppose. And you're trying to figure out, okay, so if I'm accepting of some of these things that I experience, that's weird, because I've just spent my whole life with this internal monologue saying, like for me, broken, a piece of shit, never going to do anything. And then suddenly you're like, well, I'm none of those things. But I don't have a new story about who Owen is. So does that sort of ring true? It's like, okay, well, if I'm not broken then, but I don't have any form of reference to say who I am.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. So what I quickly realised, kind of in the similar vein to what you just said, it made me realise that I wasn't fundamentally flawed. I wasn't fundamentally a bad person. I wasn't broken, and for the first time, and this is one of the benefits and the life-changing aspects of the diagnosis are the medication. But more than that, I think, is the permission that it would give me to start loving myself and to start being kinder to myself. Because before that, even with the 12-step recovery, even with all of the self-development and growth I did, self-love was elusive, because I would always make these silly mistakes, or I couldn't get there. I couldn't understand or, build that love for myself. But as soon as I got the diagnosis, I realized that I'd succeeded in so many areas of life in spite of this.
Mm-hmm.
That is worthy of respect and love, and that's hard. That doesn't come easily to me, but that's, I think, been the biggest benefit, is the idea that I can love myself, and it's been a massively changing this paradigm. I guess it's changed me profoundly. That ability to just, my self-worth isn't on the table now. My self-worth isn't a negotiation point. I believe in myself, and I believe that I deserve good things and to be happy. Whereas before I didn't. I always felt like there was always this overriding guilt. I don't deserve to be happy, and that sort of thing. So yeah, it was. I relate very much to that.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've made such a good point there about, you can look back. I said about all those negative thought patterns, but also you're right, the things that you did. So I think it's very important to sit back and just reflect on your life, all those little moments of, wow, how did I do that with ADHD? For people, how did I do that with autism, whatever it may be, dyslexia? Like, how do you get a degree? Do you have dyslexia and you get the support you need? And just like bathing in that briefly as well. Because like, wow, now I do know. What else could I do? But maybe that sort of not knowing is why it worked, because you were just tapping into the presentation is actually really helpful. If I think about, before I was diagnosed, I ran a massage business for years, and I massaged nearly 1,000 people. Insanely successful business. Worked at a theatre. I was massaging actors and crew and getting shows over the line, make sure everybody was moving well. I did all of that with undiagnosed ADHD, with all the other issues I have with sensitivity, rejection. Running a business when you're sensitive to rejection is exhausting. Does every client, did they get enough out of it? Did they like it? They seem to be a bit off. It's exhausting. Whereas now, if I did that, I go, okay, I know I'm going to have all those things. So let's work on that and find some grounding in myself. And I can be even better massage therapist, or maybe not. Who knows? But that's kind of true, isn't it? It's like, holy shit, I did all that. It's cool. Yeah. So good. Amazing. Right. Let's dive in a little bit. There's a bit here that's saying about, how your neurodivergent brain presents in the current day. But if we just intertwine that with everything we're about to talk about, I'll sort of weave it in. So let's just start with a grounding of, what is your opinion? What are your thoughts on the link between ADHD and addiction? Do you feel there is some, science out there and some statistics, but you personally, do you think people with ADHD are more likely to become addictive? What's your political thought, is what I'm saying?
Yeah, so ADHD being, not to go too sciencey, but our neurotransmitters that kind of transport dopamine and serotonin, GABA, are misfiring a lot of the time. I may get some of the science wrong, but in principle, that's broadly it. And so we're striving and craving dopamine at all times to help us feel a bit more alive. And so, even if you're starting from a position where you've got a lower level of dopamine or serotonin or GABA, you're already looking and seeking for something to make you feel a bit more normal. And so you might turn to alcohol or any other drug. And what that does is it immediately, alcohol in particular, spikes your dopamine massively. So you suddenly feel confident and alert, and that voice just quietens down. And I think the second factor with that and addiction is, addiction comes with a lot of guilt and shame, because no one wakes up in the morning and decides, I want to be an alcoholic. No one does that. You become very good at hiding it. You become very good at masking, and there's a lot of correlation between that and ADHD. Because for ADHD, if you haven't got it, you tend, if you haven't been diagnosed, you tend to develop coping strategies to mask the fact that you have ADHD. And so there's some correlations there. But I think with both cases, addiction and of ADHD, for me, and from what I've observed, having been in the rooms of AA and NA for many, many years, is at the heart of it all is a sense that I don't belong. I'm the odd one out. No one really likes me. They just pretend to. And that is a really punishing dialogue. And so the kind of what you end up doing, or what I ended up doing, was I just wanted to quiet that voice down. I didn't want to be punished every night, every day. I didn't want, as an example, I could have 100 people compliment me, and then one person say something mildly critical, and that would be the only thing I thought about. That would be the kind of like the nucleus of a good few weeks of spiraling. But in terms of addiction, I think because we're we respond so I guess profoundly to things like alcohol and various other drugs. It kind of, it's almost pushing us down that road. And this is very anecdotal, but having been in AA for a long time, it's becoming more and more prevalent that people are saying, I'm getting a late life diagnosis for ADHD, and it's becoming actually a real theme. So anecdotally, being in the rooms of AA, I'm seeing it. I'm hearing it a lot, and you even hear it in people that aren't diagnosed. You hear the traits and the kind of the voices of ADHD. It's I don't know. I just feel like if you've got ADHD, you are really, really primed for potentially addiction. Whether that be phone addiction, whether it be, gym addiction, alcohol addiction, anything you can use to change your emotion, to somehow quieten those voices. And so for me, realizing that I had ADHD helped me lose some of the shame and the guilt around it, alcoholism. It did, because I was like, well, I was just trying to cope. I was just trying to survive. And if I didn't have ADHD, would I have got to that point? I don't know. So yeah, it's. I think the other thing as well is with addiction and ADHD, societal stigma is getting better, support and awareness is getting better, but they're both things that if you are lacking confidence, lacking self-worth, you're a vessel of guilt and shame, they're both things that will isolate you if you let them. And isolation is I think it's Gabor Mate or Johan Hari said, isolation is at the heart of addiction. Connection is at the heart of recovery. And I've seen that. I feel very much that if I'm around people that have got a history of, or are in recovery, or around people with ADHD or ADD, or even kind of low spectrum autism, I just feel more comfortable because I feel like I don't have to act. I'm just like, I can just say one word to someone in AA, the head's going today, and they know exactly what I mean. We don't have to talk anymore. And I love that.
Yeah, there is something. Yeah, just quickly, you're right. It's something very special about speaking to fellow ADHDers who are ADHD. I don't know. It's awesome. You don't have to hide anything. It's brilliant. It's really liberating. But there's something that came up to me was a loop because I'm not going to sit here and say I have an addiction to that sort of level, but addictive personality at very low levels would make sense for ADHD or sensory seeking. Dopamine seeking, but it's that loop. So I would always ask people, are you seeking or suppressing? So are you using an activity or a substance, whatever it is, to suppress what you don't want to feel or to suppress an overactive mind? Or are you seeking dopamine? Are you feeling flat? Are you needing to get your nervous system and brain at a higher level of dopamine rituals, I suppose? So it's seek or suppress. I think the seeking probably leads to potentially less impact than the suppressing does on your overall life and your holistic health. But I do think the seeking, as you may say, the more you're doing that activity, the more you're seeking, the more shame builds up and you feel, why can't I stop doing this? Then you start suppressing the shame and you're stuck in this endless loop. That's just my words for something that I've really experienced. Does that sound?
It's absolutely true. Yeah. It feeds itself. You're craving that dopamine. You're craving that sense of normal, whatever normal is, and then you might go on a bit of a spree, or and that could be anything. It doesn't just have to be drink. It could be any addiction. You might go shopping every day, or whatever. But that then triggers the guilt and the shame, which is then where you start to hide things and where you start to bury things, and then you might come out of that again. But it is it's the opposite of a virtuous cycle. It's just it's progressive. It feeds itself. The guilt and the shame feed that need to hide and isolate. But I totally agree. And that seeking of the dopamine is overwhelming. It's not even a question of willpower. It's like this has to happen. I need this drink. I need to do this certain thing. I have strange compulsions where I need to say certain words out loud. and nothing will stop me doing it. I don't understand it, I don't explain it, but yeah, so that the desire and the craving when you've reached the point where, say, you're in active alcoholism, is beyond willpower. It's something else entirely. It's just it's a physical yearning, and then when you meet that yearning, you then have a physical response in that the shame and the guilt and the horror permeates your whole body. And I'm sure you know, our bodies keep our bodies retain this emotion. They retain this shame. They retain this guilt, and that can lead to the chronic fatigue and all manner of other, inflammatory conditions. And it's just very hard. Very hard.
Yeah. Thank you. And it's a big part of it as well can be, the seeking that you're really pushing towards, if it's going to have an impact, even like quite instantly, you don't really, it's not that you don't care, it's just you know what the aftermath is, but you do it anyway. And it's hard to explain that to people who don't understand, who don't have that sort of brain interaction with life, where you're like, I know this is going to be really bad afterwards. I guess it's a bit like somebody that's got, let's say, had a gluten intolerance, IBS, got a really weak gut in that way, but you just cannot help because you feel so flat and your emotion is so low. You, it's the one easy resource to give you a spike, and you'll take the hit. You'll take the hit. You take the hit on the toilet later. You take the hit, your stomach cramps or whatever it may be. And this is completely, I'm not saying this is in any way the same as alcoholism, but the point is that when you're that flat, good luck to fight your own brain, guys. Good luck with that. Um, and I just think because with the ADHD side is that because the tone, I like to call think it as a tone. The tone is because it's such a low tone. No one wants to sit in that low tone. And I think you do need some sort of stimulus to get dopamine going. Like, because dopamine isn't just makes you happy, so to speak. It's something you need to actually do shit. So to do housework, you need a level of dopamine because dopamine is the thing that makes you task essentially, which is why there's so much procrastination in the ADHD world. But more importantly, it's like you can't change that necessarily. Neuroplasticity means you can rewire your brain over time, but you can't change what your ADHD brain is doing or how you're interacting with. What you can do is just find other ways. It's so hard. But I cannot, for example, guys, it's really light and fluffy. The only way I can do the washing up or get the washing out, I have to put on a banging tune first. I will not do anything. I put on some disco-y house stuff that makes me smile, gives me some adrenaline, makes me happy, and then I'm pumped. Oh, let's go and wash up. I'm ready for this. I cannot do it without music. There's certain things I cannot do without a stimulus. I can make peace with that. It's causing no damage to me, anyone around me. You see what I
Yeah,
mean? I know
yeah,
that I need
100%.
that. I'm not going to
Yeah.
suppress and ignore that need.
Yeah, and you're not going to punish yourself for having that need, right? And that's where I think the liberation comes from, in that you realize that punishing yourself isn't justifiable. So you kind of embrace it, and that's actually a really good idea, because housework and that sort of thing. That even with the medication I'm on, nothing will motivate me to do something I don't want to do necessarily, unless I use tricks on myself. I sometimes have competitions with myself. Can I do this by this time? And if I don't, what's going to happen? I'll come up with random, I guess, consequences. But yeah, it's the flatness in particular is really, really difficult to deal with, because for a long time I was diagnosed as having depression and anxiety, and so that came with SSRIs, and I've been on a few of them, and the one I'm on now is okay, but they would just make me completely vanilla. I think I didn't have any highs, I didn't have any lows, I just had existence. And it was around that time I think the alcoholism really took off, because I was seeking to feel alive, even if that aliveness was pain, even if it was self-destruction. At least I felt something. I didn't feel that kind of, that just, I don't know. In my mind, I'm picturing, because you said a tone, I'm picturing like a radio dashboard, and it's just got a flat line. It's just occasional little blips, and that's not a way to live a life. It's not good.
Yeah. I think I use so many words. I don't know where they all come from, but alongside the tone level is the baseline. So where your baseline emotional tone, mood, everything, that baseline, if it's low and it's flat, it's quite unpleasant because it means it feels like you're not enjoying anything and life just feels like a drag. I think that's sometimes I think where depression might kick in, that baseline starts to drop, and then your baseline's so low that you have no choice but to bring outside stimulus in to help you. And I think that's needs to be honored in the space is that we're all working on baseline. We're not lucky enough with that neurotype to be at a baseline, which is parasympathetic, so in a connective state, is happy by anything little or small around you, that it's really fluid and it's flowing. You can have some sympathetic energy if you want to do some exercise, and it just flows. Your nervous system just flows nicely. But I think there's a rigid baseline, low tone, which we're all battling against. And I think that's a
Totally agree. And I do one of your points there, you mentioned around the way you motivate yourself to do the washing up is you put music on. I think that's one of the hardest things that I've had to understand is that I imagine the great tragedy of ADHD is I imagine so many of us have brilliant ideas that we're capable of doing, capable of bringing into the world, but the dopamine system won't give us that get up and go to do it. So these ideas can sometimes, lay on the shelf in the back of our mind. And similarly, even if we do get up to do it, we might just lose interest in something that was everything we wanted to do for a couple of months, and we flick away from it. Whereas if we could just continue down the road, we can build great things. And I think, that's something I'm very conscious of, like the breathwork stuff I'm doing. There are times where I really struggle with that. I'm just going to keep going. Because otherwise it was just going to be an idea in my head. So that's where medications helped on that.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that's what working out for you, because I think there's a lot of pushing involved. There's days where your dopamine, your baseline's so low that you're not going to do things that could really change your life, and that's really devastating. I think that's a big part of it. It's not what we're not doing; it's what we are doing but are struggling to implement. So it's a struggle. It's a tricky one. Yeah, thanks, mate. This has been really, really cool. So as far as like the stigma of all this, I think there'll be more stigma towards someone's personality, in inverted commas, for being an addict over someone with ADHD. I think they're looked separately. I mean, a lot of people are like, oh, ADHD is a load of crap, just get on with it, stop being lazy, these are just excuses. That's a different criticism to just stop drinking. Why can't you? It's pathetic. Why just say no? What's wrong with you? They both have stigma. So with both involved in your life in some capacity over the years, it's a weird one. Do you have double stigma issues with people, or have you sort of made peace with it all and you're kind of like trying to step in your power?
In the last oddly enough, in the last 4 months, I'd say I've gone through some fairly significant changes. I think as the medications kicked in fully and I've come to some realizations about myself, I've come to start loving and respecting myself more. Not completely, but more. And so that gives me a really good grounding. But in terms of the double stigma, I think you're right. Like ADHD, we do get just sort yourself out, just drink some coffee and all of that sort of thing. Whereas the alcoholism or that kind of addiction, people see it as like a moral failing. Like you are fundamentally morally unable to control yourself. Why don't you just stop drinking? And that's really, really hard, because it isn't a moral failing. It's a response to pain. It's a response to apathy. So I think definitely the stigma for depression, for alcoholism and addiction is more difficult to carry, because it isolates you. And I think the final frontier, or one of the final frontiers, is in the workplace. So workplaces are really, really good now at talking about mental health, talking about, being aware of neurodivergence, being aware that, people get depressed and people get burnt out, but it stops when you get to, okay, so you're in a mental health crisis. What are you doing? And you're drinking and you're taking drugs, or you're, involved in destructive behavior. And until we get that conversation into the workplace as well, and normalize the fact that people do get addicted to alcohol, because it's a highly addictive substance, and bring that into the equation, people will still have a need to hide. And that's what I had to do. I didn't want my colleagues to know about it because I was ashamed of it. I didn't want to, potentially lose my job. As it turned out, I got nothing but love for my colleagues. So we build these things up in our heads as well. We believe what we judge ourselves. We judge what they're going to say based on what we would say to ourselves, and people don't. They show love and support. But yeah, the stigma of addiction, the stigma of alcoholism, is quite. It's getting better, but I think it's quite profound. And I think for me, it took me a good year to openly just say to people, I'm an AA, don't drink, And you kind of have to do this thing where, with alcohol in particular, you have to justify why you don't take it in society. What are you boring? You boring? But no, if I take it, bad things happen. And it's one of the only drugs that you have to do that with. You have to justify why I'm not taking this drug. It's very difficult. But I think things are changing slowly. It took me a year to actually just say to people outright, I don't drink, I'm an alcoholic, I'm in recovery. And I actually say it not with pride, but it takes a lot to give up alcohol. It takes an awful lot. It's very difficult. So instead of seeing it as a weapon of shame against myself, I now see it as recovery as an indication of how strong I can be, and how despite those very difficult circumstances, I could pick myself up and move forward. Not on my own, with a lot of people supporting me, but that's a real source of confidence. If you can give up, I thought if I could give up alcohol and stay sober, I could do anything. Do anything. And so now that's why I do this page and talk about it openly, share loudly, because there are so many people in plain sight dealing with this. And people have that idea that the alcoholic is the guy on the park bench with messy coat. They're amongst us. They walk amongst us. They may not be drinking alcoholically every day, but when they do drink, they drink alcoholically. And it's just pretty tragic.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think it's like, who's it for? When you acknowledge, oh, I'm an alcoholic, I'm going to stop drinking. Imagine if we just did that for everyone around us to show, yeah, okay, look, this is what I am. I'm doing it for you. You're going to slip up, because it has to fundamentally at your core has to be for you for some reason. Maybe because you want to live by your values towards your loved ones. Technically, you're doing it for them, but it's your value to be kind and not be emotional and aggressive and things like that. And I think it has to be everything you do, just come into your heart and ground in and just say, why am I doing this for me? Because that will be the grounding for why you say no every single time.
Absolutely. And without that solid understanding in yourself that you're doing this because you want and need to do it, you will often find yourself being battered about by the winds of society. And maybe you're doing it for a partner. Well, what happens if a partner leaves you? Where's your why then? It needs to come from within. It needs to be self-defined. Otherwise you're kind of giving yourself a dependency on an outside circumstance to get better, to do the inside job, and that's not going to work. And it's why also you can't tell someone, you can't drag someone to an AA meeting. They need to do it themselves, or whether it be a different means of getting sober. You can't do it for people. They have to make the decision themselves and surrender. Nothing you can do to stop them unless they want to do it themselves. And that's really infuriating and heartbreaking for people to watch.
Yeah, certainly is. And I think this element of feeling empowered, we can help people feel empowered, but empowerment actually comes from them taking it on, absorbing it, and then empowering themselves. You're giving them empowering tools, not actually empowering them, if that makes sense.
Yes, correct.
People will say to you, well, if you can't do it for you, do it for me or do it for them. I'm like, that's not how life works, I'm afraid. We can, to a point, do things for our family. Of course we will. We protect that child at all costs, obviously. And we'll where we can, we will definitely stick to the job because we need to bring food in for our child. Fine, that's one thing. But anything over that, when you're doing something, at least 10% has to be for you. Otherwise, what's the point? And I just think there's so much more to this, especially with ADHD, for example, because I feel like we're not touching on that many presentations, but PDA, so they call it pathological demand avoidance. So wanting to have autonomy and not be told what to do can be a big issue for ADHD. I call it pervasive drive for autonomy, because that's more positive. Pathological demand avoidance sounds terrible. It sounds like you have a real issue with being told what to do. People are like, don't be pathetic, just do what you're told. But pervasive drive for autonomy, I'm sure when it comes to getting sober and all these other things, and an addiction is that there has to be this element of autonomy where you're doing it for you because it matters to you and you want to be a better person, a better version of yourself. There is this drive to have autonomy there, not be told. Through intervention, for example, may help you to a certain point, but intervention is being forced upon you and is creating a demand, which you may reject and worsens your behavior. But people are, I've got off on a tangent here. Anyway, I'll leave that to one side. So PDA is a big part of this as well, that we need to have autonomy over things. But just to wrap it all up, especially in a workplace, I think what people see is your behavior, right? All they're seeing is your behavior, and that includes what you speak. That behavior is what they're judging you by, identifying you as, whether they want to be your friend or not, or if they feel awkward around you, if they want distance. That's all that matters, your behavior. And I think these habits that we have, including the high level of addiction down, is it leads to a certain behavior, which freaks people out. People are drawn to it. People may make it worse because they celebrate you in that behavior. I think it's knowing when I work with clients, when I launch, it's about at your core with your values. How do you want to behave? What do you really care about? What matters to you in your behavior, and lead that way of life before seeing everyone thinks I'm this or this. So what are your thoughts there on how we present is how we're judged?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. I put up a quote the other day actually on this topic. I think it's something along the lines of, if people love the person you are pretending to be, they don't love you. They love the person you're pretending to be. Right? They love the illusion, the mask you're showing the world. But I flipped over into active alcoholism during COVID when I lived on my own. That was like the melting pot. Isolation, on own, delivery, Uber Eats, delivering drink whenever I needed it. Didn't even leave the house. So my behaviour was kind of isolated from people because I joined Teams calls at work, but I would kind of make sure that I was pacing my drink throughout the day. But if I was in a public setting or going into work, it would have taken so much effort to, present that facade of being up together and being, in a good place. But I would very quickly latch on to, if people were going to the pub that evening, oh, I'll come along, yeah, why not? When all I wanted was for them to be going to the pub so I could go and, oddly, have a couple of drinks and then say, I need to head home, I want an early night, just so I could go home and drink on my own. I didn't want anyone else interfering. But yeah, our behaviour and the behaviour of those around us can be both positive and negative. And in a negative sense, you do have, or I did have people in my life that were like, just come on, just have a drink, you'll be fine. You've never been that bad. It's like, well, I've never been that bad because you've not seen the consequences. So yeah, it's challenging. It's challenging. I think the more you act as well, the more you present the facade, the more you forget who you actually are. And you have to kind of remember who you are with that group, and who you are that group, and who you are that group. Because we chameleon, right? We people please. I could go see three different groups of friends and be a different Scott. And now I'm more like, what matters to Scott? Integrity matters. Being honest, being gentle, being kind, being compassionate. That's what matters. And being myself, and not taking things so personally, which is not easy all the time. But they're my core values, and they're what I measure myself against now, rather than does so and so like me? Do they think I'm funny? Because I have no control over those things. I do have control over my attitude and how I behave and how I present to the world. And I've just found it much simpler just to be me. And I'm more comfortable now. I think because the medication has quieted the voices of my head down, I'm more comfortable now in just sort of like accepting it if people don't like me. Okay, cool. Not everyone has to like me, whereas a couple of years ago, that would have been, I would have drank for days over that. How can they not like me? Why don't they like me? What's wrong with me? What do I need to do to change? Maybe I should get them to give me a list. All these things, right? But just being authentic and being yourself and embracing your quirks, it just makes life simpler. And I need life simple, basically. I make it complicated enough on my own.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And it's kind of like they always like the line, it's none of your business what people think about you, which I quite like.
Yeah.
You don't have to waste the time thinking about it, which is easier said than done. And I'm not going to say that as a blanket statement because that's ridiculous. But I just think that it's not even that people don't like you as such. It's just like it just doesn't match or whatever. And and a lot of it's their stuff. And sometimes it's just a fact of life. Like, with businesses, I'm always shitting myself. I'm going to get a horrible comment.
Yeah.
And in 7 months, I've had one, and it wasn't even about me. So linked to me. So I'm going to get some as it grows, obviously. Some people probably listen to the show and go, he talks too much. He's got a really irritating voice. Why is that? None of that matters. Doesn't hit me at all, does it?
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because with the breathwork stuff I'm starting up, I'm waiting for the first negative comment, and I've had a dialogue in my head about how it'll go. They'll say this and I might say that. And it's like, I just need to let it go, and either not read the comments or just believe that people are going to be nice. But I'm sure it will happen.
Just fact of life, really. You don't have to judge them for it either. If you start judging them, you're part of the problem. Everyone just needs to stop judging. Let people, as long as no one's harming anybody, just let people express themselves. But just, I'm aware that we need to finish up, but there's something you said there which I think wraps up the show really nicely, which is you're talking about masking. And we often think about masking and adjusting our mask even to different environments. It's a different theatre play with a different set of masks. But we always talk about how it can burn us out and it means we can't be authentic. But you said something, I think it is Johan Hari, I think, which you're talking about the connection being a big part of all of this. What masking also does, not only does it affect you on a core level of authenticity, it blocks you from connection, because people will pick up. There'll be something about what you're doing, the way you're using eye contact, the way your speech seems to be irregular. You're not saying the same thing in every conversation. You've forgotten where your mask thing was, that you're blocking connection. People pick up on it, they'll distance themselves, and you'll feel bad about yourself. Like, why does no one want to hang out with me? It's because they're picking up on something about you that's inauthentic. And I think not only does it burn us out, it blocks connection. And connection is where we can really start to heal and move forward. And discover who we are through authentic expression. You express something authentically, and people are, oh my God, that's so true. I feel like, oh, you do? Oh my God. And then suddenly you've got this friendship of complete unjudged love. Oh, and it's incredible. And I think
Yeah, absolutely.
it does, doesn't it?
Exactly. And you raised a really good point there in terms of, being aware of these things that we do. Like, for me, I do struggle with eye contact. But what I do is, if I'm meeting someone for the first time and I know they're going to be in my life for a while, I'll say to them, look, sometimes we're talking, I won't be looking at you. I'm listening, I'm fully engaged, but I won't be looking, because I'll just be, looking all over the place. And similarly with interrupting, I say to them, if I interrupt you, just tell me, because I just have this thing that I want to say now. But yeah, if the mask's there, they're not loving you, they're loving the performance. And that's draining for us, and it's not good for them, because you can only sustain the mask for so long.
It's an interesting one, isn't it?
It is.
If I've learned anything about my time in the neurodivergent community since last October, is, like we said earlier, find your tribe. We say this on the show a lot in this space. And I guess that's why AA is really powerful as well, is that when people get what you're talking about, the mask just disappears and it just feels fantastic. And even if they didn't like you, I don't know, they wouldn't. It's different. I don't think they wouldn't not like you. There's something about a shared experience where it's really hard to not like the other person, really, unless they're being horrible to you, obviously. But I don't know. There's something about connection. You're right. And I think it's really, really powerful. Amazing stuff. I could talk to you all day. There's so much more we could have said, but I try to keep the shows to under an hour, as the audience know. But it's just been really, really powerful. It's made me really think about everything's all about the baseline and the dopamine and the seeking and the suppression. I think between us, we've come up with loads of language here today, which people can relate to, which is fantastic. That's what it's all about. But if I was going to get you, everyone does this. I ask my guests to give us like a parting speech, a parting message to our audience. So a message of hope for any NDers listening, addiction or otherwise, that, to celebrate us, basically a really lush little NDer saying why we're going to be fine.
All right. Yeah, I would say, kind of echo you a little bit. You don't need to isolate. You don't need to be ashamed. Find the people. Find the people that share your experience, whether that be, AA or other sober groups, or whether that be, neurodivergent communities. Seek them out. Educate yourself about the condition. Allow yourself to be on the front foot. Forgive yourself daily. We make mistakes every day. We don't need to ruminate. Just keep going. Just acknowledge the things that you've done in your life that you've done in the face of extreme internal challenges, obstacles that are self-imposed. And one of the things I always say to myself often, and in fact, I've got a sticker of it on my laptop. It's not about you, sort of saying to me, because I take things way too personally, and that would lead to so many dark moments. So that's one tiny bit of advice. It's not about you. Don't worry. You're fine. You're great. You're awesome. If they have an opinion, that's not about you. It's about them. But yeah, find your tribe, connect with people. It makes all the difference.
Yeah, thanks so much. And just there's one key thing you said today, which I want everybody to take away with them, which I thought was really powerful, is that you, in that moment of diagnosis and the weeks to follow, you look back and go, what did I do? I don't like the word despite, because that sounds a bit like you're pulling against it. But what did you do in the face of it? I want to thank you. That's such a beautiful way to deal with the diagnosis. Because when you actually do that, you're like, holy shit. And then that's who you are. You're an incredible, powerful, motivated being, regardless of what your ADHD is doing. And I think that's amazing. It makes us, I don't like resilience. Resilience actually has a sense of, you're having to fight, you've got that resilience, but more an openness to try things. And when you get knocked down, you get back up again. That's not resilience, that's just being flexible and being able to bounce back. And that's a really cool skill. So that's really lovely. And just to finish up, something you said there. Here's an example, guys, for me and Scott. So we met on Instagram. So we're talking about connection here, right? So we both have ADHD. So we're already going to bond, probably. We're going to want to be friends because we have this similar thing that feels really special to feel that. I haven't been an alcoholic. I can't connect with that, but I can connect with the mental health aspect of what you've been through. Two connections. And failing that, guys, if you're struggling to find NDers right now, find people with the same passion. So maybe start, if you're feeling a bit isolated and alone, find a group for something that you're super nerdy about. Yeah. So at work I have people that adore football. I adore football. So we talk about football all the way through the shift. And I feel alive. I feel amazing. Oh, I talk about football. I feel like I'm bouncing, vibing with this guy. And that's great. I love wrestling. I'm back into wrestling again at 42. I know, pathetic, it's not real, but I love it. It's EastEnders with fighting. Incredible. And I have wrestling fans, and we talk all about that. I adore films. I have people that adore films, and we message back and forth. Have you seen this film? It's all connection, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. 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 Can I just ask what football team you support then? Because I'm a bit of a football fanatic.
I'm a Chelsea fan for my sins.
Oh.
So that's where it all comes from. But I love films. I set up a movie podcast for years with my friend. I had to put it on ice for now because I've got 105 things to do. But the point is, doing that podcast, talking about films, I brought all my friends in that were doing reviews, and it was such a gorgeous thing that we all had to go out, all from different backgrounds. We all love movies. We have a show together where we review stuff. Incredible. And that's how you can enrich your life. So I'm working with clients. It's what are you super nerdy up on, and where can we find you people that are too, in a nice way. I think that's really important.
Yeah, because if you find those people, the engagement with them will lead to other changes in your life.
Yeah.
It'll
give you the confidence. And someone in that group may have ADHD. And they say, oh my God, I've got that. Have you thought about that? Like you said with your ex. And then boom. So you put yourself out there, and it leads to transformative moments. So it's just being able to do it in the safety is so important, do it in the safest way possible. So think about that, guys. Don't push yourself into unsafe situations. Anyway, complete tangent there, everyone. That was fun. So before we go, Scott, where can we find you? Where can we find you online, and what can we expect to see?
Yeah, so Instagram primarily, sober_compass. I'm just starting up a breathwork practicing service, which is kind of partly to do alongside my day job, but also I want to use it to help people on low incomes get exposure to these kind of techniques, which are often some can be priced out of. So it's half altruistic, half added revenue, I guess, to my life. But that's on intra_compass. They're both similarly branded. But what you'll find on Sober Compass is just the me existing and trying to find lessons and trying to find learnings that I then share in posts or videos, or in a way that I often think that I'm doing it for everyone else. But a couple of hours after I put a post up, I think to myself, I was saying that to me. So it's been really helpful as a kind of self-journaling, holding a mirror up. But yeah, you'll just find a normal guy, talking about his struggles and trying to reduce stigma and reduce isolation. So yeah, come along and say hello.
Yeah, thank you. It's a great page. Guys, go and check it out. It's really well put together. It looks really good as well. I'm a stickler for graphic design, so I like pages that have a vibe and a theme and a look, stylish, that's what you want. That's amazing. I'll put all the links in the show notes for people to come and check you out. Pretty much everybody at some point is coming back on. I've had loads of returning guests. Love to have you back on. And we'll talk some more about this. But just thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for being so authentic. And I appreciate your time.
No, thanks, Aaron. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for allowing me on.
Yeah, of course, mate. Of course. We want as many men on the show as possible. If you're listening and male coaches, things like that, people I may not have found yet online, just send them my way. I'm really, really keen to talk to more men. I know most of my audience is female, but I want to bring more men into the fold. So thanks so much for listening, everybody. Really hope you're getting value from the episodes. I have some absolutely immense guests coming on in September. One particularly, one of my heroes is coming on. I'm getting emotional about it. I'm so excited. So I'm really grateful to all of you spreading the word. And I cannot wait to launch my business and support people with ADHD. But it's going to look very different to a traditional ADHD coach, working with presence, working with neurobiology, and working with the nervous system. So I'll do a polyvagal course as well. So I'm hoping to bring a whole holistic approach to ADHD, mind and body. Stick around for my advert at the end of the show. ANKHWAY mushroom gummies. I know Scott knows this well. He takes them. Absolutely awesome company that have taken good care of me. And it's like Scott said, it's bring some income in. The more income I can get from this company, the more I can help more clients because I can do less shifts at work. I drop shifts at work. I help more people. Simple equation. So by you buying the gummies, if they help you and using my code, means that I can use that money to create time to help fellow NDers. Stick around for the advert. I had a lot of fun making it. And I really hope that if you try them, you get a lot of value. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time. ND and Free is in partnership with ANKHWAY Mushroom Gummies. Since my ADHD diagnosis in October 2024, I had been trying to find a supplement to help my struggle to focus, ease my brain fog, and help my overall energy. I'd been getting mixed results from multiple supplements until I came across ANKHWAY's Mushroom Gummies. So I removed all other supplements and began to take 2 of the delicious tasting gummies each morning after eating. By the 4th week, I really started to notice I could focus for longer and my brain fog wasn't anywhere near as bad. Naturally, they may not work for everybody, but I feel it's my mission to at least let you all know about these gummies. They include 10 functional mushrooms within them, including lion's mane, shiitake, and turkey tail mushrooms. With their non-GMO, gluten-free, and filler-free gummies, they offer a tasty solution to an ND brain. You can order one-off pouches with 60 gummies inside or sign up to the discounted monthly bundles. Best of all, if you use my code OWEN15, you'll get 15% off your order. Visit www.ankhway.com and use code OWEN15 at checkout. That is www.ankhway.com.